Hi, everybody. Yet again, another podcast. Um, I hope everybody is trying to stay safe and using their heads instead of their emotional reactive states. And it's a little difficult when the figures are jumping, not only here in Canada but in the United States as well, in spite of vaccines. And please try and stay safe the best you possibly can. I want to thank everyone, those who sent in some questions, because there's always a need for questions. And I'd like to try and attempt to look at Susan Hardy in North Carolina and uh, Chris McLaughlin in Nashville's question. I'm not sure they're both not the same, but there's a similarity between the two of them. So what I'll try first, I'll talk about uh, Susan Hardy's the best I can, and that will lead perhaps into Chris's questions as well. So Ron, I'm having questions about heart energy. And as soon as I mention that, and she mentions that, we have in our minds what we've already heard about heart energy versus this energy versus that energy. And we already have in our mind how the chakras are much better higher than lower. And this is really confusing because, first of all, each chakra can be very, very helpful and have tremendous love come out of them. Every one of them. They're not talked about like that. And I have no idea why that discrepancy has occurred, except that I do have a bit of an idea. We have opinions about if you're standing on the ground, you're kind of low. If you're up a ladder at very high level, then you're higher. I mean, these are legitimate things to look at when you're actually a human being, trying to relate everything to the context that we have in relationship to being a person, 5 foot something, 6 foot something, 7 foot something, and being valued because you're tall or short or whatever. It starts really early, and it continues on in almost everything. So I'll start there. Uh, I'll just go on with your question, Susan. Otherwise, I'll miss the question, and I'll be talking about the things that are involved with the question. So, the culture has a lot of healing through the heart and other images of heart. In other words, there's a lot of concepts about these things, and I think that there are levels of heart opening and probably layers within these layers. And she's saying layers is not the right word, but I can't find words to fit it. Yeah, it makes sense. So in is heart energy different, or is it the flow from the highest as through all other, from the highest as through all of our system? Let me go on because I'm not just sure what she means by that. That makes me wonder if there are any different kinds of energy that come through us, or is it just different frequencies that are different? As we grow, are we able to handle different, say, levels of energy that are different from just higher frequency? Okay, wow. I think the first idea that, from my perspective, I think is important is to try and begin to understand that each and every frequency that we normally talk about so easily, first of all, is related to color, frequency, color, tones. Well, let's say color. It's easy for us because we're very visual, mostly. Yet our emotions are very tone sensitive. So if you raise your voice, a person will be looking at you, and there will be a visceral response to either move back from you or to move forward towards you. This is tonal. It's a tonal relationship. And we're sensitive with respect to these tones or frequencies from the time prior to the time of our birth. In the womb, we're learning about those tones. Okay. We have a very kind of congealed visual palette. Usually they're called violet, pinkish blue, orange, green, yellow, green, blue, red. Now, what I just did there, I just looked at a rainbow in the sky. There is an attempt in sunlight coming through the particles of water and dust, and it shows kind of a prism, Prism, in case you heard me wrong, a prism related to color frequency. If you're, depending on who you're reading, if you're reading anything about color, and they just say frequency. Every frequency is a color. And there are certain frequencies that we can perceive, and there are many that we cannot. So, next, there's a concept of continuum, meaning this. Because there are many views about colors. For example, many people believe that red is a bad color and blue is a good color, and green is, not too bad. Some people think you're only interested in economics if you wear something green. Some people believe that you are involved with love and wisdom if you're wearing blue all the time. Red, we say, bulls they get really angry when they see red. Bulls can't see the color red. It's just not possible for them. We can, but they see the flutter of that blanket, but they can't see the color red. You look it up. So we have a lot of views about these colors. Orange, well, okay. And purple, purple, you're very spiritual. Violet or purple at its coarsest level is just as self-focused as any other color or any other frequency that may be operating through you in the chakras, for example. However, we have these miscues. We hear some things, we value or assess. If you were clairvoyant, you would assess based on what you believed or have been told this color means. In fact, that's a possibility, but it may not be true. Because what we're doing is we're reading into things by our personality. And our personality is still young, and it cannot understand that there's something else at foot there. Um, in the Buddhist orientation, yellow and orange and red are favorite colors. And the reason for that is because they're colors that relate to, from some people's point of view, having a will to continue to grow beyond relative beliefs, while they still have their own relative beliefs, as every other system has their own relative beliefs. So this is not about negativity. This is about early learning on a continuum. Frequencies, also views, personality assessments are based on how that person affects you from your assessment perspective. I'll just slow that down for a minute. In other words, if you see somebody that reminds you of Uncle George, who you never liked, then you will automatically have a reflex in you not to be comfortable with that person because they remind you too much of Uncle George. They may not even be like Uncle George. Mind you, they could be, but it depends on them and their engagement with the energy that is flowing through them. One of the reasons why I haven't talked about different frequencies very much is because of this concept of continuum. And the table that we have in our heads, like, for example, the ARE groups, Everett Casey's group, legitimately engages with a rule book that relates to reading a certain frequency in a certain way, primarily if it's emotional. And it's fine, except that if on a mental plane, if a person is on a mental plane or somewhat along the line, and you become clear, in the middle of a continuum, for example, the continuum goes from the coarsest engagement with life to a broader perspective, and finally into a link with another higher aspect or higher state. So red, for example, this is not being argumentative, this is just an idea, maybe coarser, and then it becomes less coarse, less coarse, less coarse, less coarse, until you reach a place where it is highly engaged with higher states that has nothing to do with the self. At coarser states, the personality is really focused on the self and what they believe has to be true. That is true for everyone. Don't care what it is, who they are, just doesn't matter. If I'm thinking about something and at this point I believe this must be true, then I will believe at that point until I understand something different. If I defend that, then I am being as coarse as anyone else would be, because I am subjected to the natural tendency we have on these planes habitually to protect that which you believe has to be true. Try that out with any belief. It's always the same. Yet we like to have the idea in our heads that if a number of people see it this way, therefore it must be that way. And then another grouping somewhere else sees it a different way, and they must be wrong and you must be right. This is a dilemma about leaning on rules and regulations in spiritual growth. The good thing about it is it gives you a sense of value if it makes some sense to you for a time. And then you continue, because you grow through you and how you believe things are. You grow through you to get to the unknown that you haven't touched yet. This is natural, then, to feel comforted by believing things a certain way for a certain purpose, and that purpose often is to self-protect. This is natural in our world. It's not negative. It's how it is for us. So in a continuum, there's always motion, movement, shift, change, and a deeper understanding. And then things come together slightly in a different understanding, and we say, oh my goodness, could it be that there's something beyond what makes sense to me now? And that is something that everyone should have in their back pocket. And it's very difficult to have that because we're creatures that believe that once we hit on an idea, then it seems that that's the only one that we should maintain. Listening to other ideas is not negative, but it can make you curious about the possibility of the way that you're moving and through inside of you in relationship to your own spiritual growth. It sounds a little off from the question. It's not. Because when you have to answer a question of this nature, this is a tremendous question. So one could say, relative to this question of Susan's, one could say, what is the normal frequency for the heart center? And some would say, green. Everybody knows that that must be it. It's not real. Mine is certainly not green. Many that I've met, they're not green. They're a different frequency because that person is engaging with a different frequency so that energy can function through that heart center for whatever that reason is in engaging and adapting to life, or engaging and enabling others to begin to grow. But other centers do not have to follow that alignment. One could be orange, one could be translucent with a little bit of red in it, one could be violet. Your root center can be violet. That I know for sure. But it may be willfully very focused on itself, but through its lifetime, it learns to adapt to frequency on a different level. What do you mean? Well, it may be violet, and then a touch of blue engages with it because in another lifetime, it was blue. Not bad, not good, just that's the trail that they've been walking. And they've been walking through a pathway, ultimately moving in a direction to have perhaps every frequency to being able to operate through that center, whatever that center would be. Yes, it could be the heart center. But there is love in every center. Every frequency carries love in it. Self-love, love of others, the love of nature, the love of learning, the love of engaging and understanding what the nature of higher states. That's only a few. Also, could it be that many views on these chakras, including the heart center, are attempting to understand what the possibilities are? For example, Alice Bailey of the Theosophical background wrote a number of books on what they call the rays. Rays are only frequencies that can interact with in the system or external from the system. You can call them anything you want. It ends up, you're talking about frequencies. And in our world, these frequencies can only be seen relative to the planes we live on, or we have a slight tendency to be aware of, and then we come out with the rules. If this color looks this way, then it's this, and that's not good, and this is not good. Well, I'm saying they're all good. And here's the reason why. Because every one of these frequencies are there, some at its coarse level, some at a kind of a medium level, some at a very sophisticated, elegant level, not noticed well by the eye or the inner eye, because the inner eye has a relationship with the personalized version of what must be true because you think it. There is no negation in that. That also is in a process of growth. It's wonderment to look at these things and wonder if only one way to see them has to be true. I think everybody gets caught up in these things. You have views that relate to your kitchen table, how you were trained when you were a kid. And you grumble about that, or you're just ecstatic about it. But you end up engaging the way that occurred, that kitchen table occurred, and you don't know it. Sometimes you do, but you wouldn't believe that you're acting the same way as occurrences that occurred at that old kitchen table when you were 8 and 10 years old, or earlier, or later. So in the process of looking at love operating through the heart center, it is a tremendous combining center. It's fascinating. I think Dr. Douglas Baker, name some, a woman from Denmark, it was Denmark, and Holland, because I think she was from both places, actually. And she was a theosophist, had a certain kind of perception that allowed her to perceive the heart center and to try and make sense of it based on some of the stuff that has been written in theosophy between Blavatsky and many, many, many other people. And she had some other views, Hindu and Buddhist views as well, as theosophy started from that direction. And she was trying to understand this. And I went to one of her lectures in Scotland, in Edinburgh. I was very grateful to be invited to one of these things. And when we were watching her, she gave a lecture. And when she was finished, it was a very fascinating lecture on the heart center. And she walked over to me and she said, "I know who you are. And did that sound familiar when I gave my talk?" And I said, "Yeah, it could have been mine." And I've been doing this for years. When did you cotton into this idea of the importance of the heart center, but not for only healing, but for healing within, related to other centers who are all healing centers, from the root, the gonad, the solar plexus, the crown, the brow, and this humongous throat center and its compadres up behind, that some people call the Alta Major Center, some people call it the Seven Sisters, some people call it all kinds of things. We have to call things things. That makes us feel a lot better. So there's no negation in this. And she said, yes, I cottoned onto it. She emphasized that. And she said, there's only one way to do that, and you know that. And I said, yeah, there's only one way to do that. And that's not to pay too much attention to the frequencies, but begin to pay attention past the frequency concept into the idea of expression operating through chakras that you can perceive. And you're not looking for the frequency, because every chakra will ultimately have the ability, have the ability in our futures to be able to handle each and every one for the purpose of higher states being able to operate through them to enable others or touch others in a helping manner called healing of the soul. In a helping manner so that they can slowly be affected on these planes by someone who lives on these planes. Not the personalized form, but the ability that flow, higher flow, has to operate through a chakra from the coarsest level to the more sublime levels. That means, in all honesty, anyone who can do that is not really interested in being great. They're just interested in helping. That's an act of love from a chakra that isn't only focused on the self for the purpose of elevating the self. That's one of the reasons why the so-called upper centers were called upper centers. And the lower ones were known to be focused on the personality orientation at their coarsest engagement. And that coarse engagement is exceedingly important to function on these planes. Where we don't go far enough in this is that the upper levels feed down into the lower ones to broaden out and expand their capacity to be functional beyond the personality's exercised expression and habit. So yes, the heart center is really important. Ultimately, what happens is there's a combination of the root, gonad, and solar plexus, which, by the way, comes together. First of all, individually they come together, then they meet together and they flow upward. Some have had them flow upward in the front, some at the back, some at the sides. Anyway, let's not get into that one too much. And it flows upward and turns on the lower centers, turn on that energy above, but the focus is still on the personality's capacity. Slowly, the expression, the broadening of those brow, throat, and crown centers start, especially the throat and brow, start stimulating the upper part of the heart center, while previously the root, gonad, and solar plexus had started to stimulate the lower part of the heart center. And it's a must so that the energy can move through into the upper centers. Once the upper centers are stimulated, even on their coarsest engagement, relative engagement levels, they begin to be stimulated on their own. They start to grow internally. And as they grow past the level that they've been helped to grow by the starter form, which is so vital in our world, they begin to bring energy down into the solar plexus, root, gonad center, throat, chest, for the purpose of enabling them to go beyond where they could go previously. This often causes a few difficulties because the personality legitimately doesn't want to change, doesn't want to shift, doesn't want to have anything happen that is any different than what it has cultivated from the time of their birth. In older traditions, it was often said you should never begin to try to grow until you're at least 50 or 55. In some of the ancient traditions, some people would come in at the age of 6 or 7 or 8. They would go sit beside a tree and glow because they were already prepared to do so through other lives. And then they would have a mission and go out and seek and complete their mission and die off young. Well, here's what happened when they did that. Most fascinating. I'm sure you're excited. I get excited about it. The dilemma is, the interesting thing is, their astral body, where they could grow inside with each of these chakras, is still there, as is all of your favorites that you believe were great, wondrous, able beings, and they were. Their form, the astral form, is oscillating relationship to the frequencies that they were involved with at the time that they were here, oscillating so that the species would be oscillated and shifted by their frequency capacity, slow and easy, and in proportions relative to their capacity to handle that shift over time. As you, whoever you are, what doesn't matter, you will lead that astral form in and around this species, whatever level you can grow in now for the benefit of others, not because your name is whatever it is. It's not very relevant. I shouldn't say that out loud. But because you are able to shift a little internally, literally, and emanations of energy, just like light coming out of a normal lamp, lights up this area, that frequency engages with the species in the relative method that might be helpful to others after you have moved on from these planes or moved on to another life to engage with perhaps the same frequency, but at a different oscillation. Or a different frequency, depending on how you have been functioning through the timelines for the purpose of attempting to gain a form through the chakras where energy can come in from a higher state to be more helpful to these planes. It can happen in the heart center. The heart center itself, after these three lower ones and three upper ones are working together, they stimulate that heart center. And there's a tremendous link up that more energy can come into you and express itself through you for the purpose of blending all of these centers into a form that can literally be expressing those higher states as if it wasn't coming from you at all. Of course, that's a level of elegance that is a little beyond what tends to suit us in relationship to engaging with others. We want to be naturally recognized, understood, and perhaps thinking in terms of whatever you're thinking about you and your engagement with whatever you are doing and whatever your spiritual cause would be. But would be then not engaging as a superior person to anybody. You would be exceedingly hopeful that others would reach in towards where you were at that time so that you could be helpful to them and they would be truly, honestly allowing that to occur if they were open to having it happen and to get past the personalization. This personalization is very difficult for us, and I don't see that happening very quickly. I've met people who say they aren't personalizing, but they are. And they're good people. They're solid. They're doing the best they can wherever they are and however they're doing it. And that's vital to do because of the stage of development that we are in as a species. And I've been lucky enough to meet some who aren't visible to others. I don't care what their level of clairvoyance is. They operate differently. They engage with you. You become them, they become you. You can't miss that glowing effect. And it has nothing to do with frequency, or let's say color, and how it needs to be spiritual. That doesn't work in those lines, those engagements. But if we believe it does, I personally think that you should be comforted by that until you start to understand that may not be the only way to understand things. I think that's true of everyone, myself included, anyone, whatever background you have. I know that doesn't sit very well with some, but nonetheless, I think it sits very well with many. And since this is kind of a closed talk, if you've ever seen the last DVD that we did, really meeting some of these people head on is humiliating. No, humbling, better word, maybe humiliating as well, but definitely humbling, where they are tremendously focused on that whole inner construct, and personalization is of no real interest to them. If you have begun to engage and perceive internally, they're with you. It's like family. And your focus on your personalization takes you out of a little bit out of perception of that sense of being a part of something that is really hard to understand in lieu of the way we think about our relationship with existence on these planes. I don't know whether I covered everything I wanted. I've covered a fair amount of stuff. If you don't mind, let me look at this. I made a couple of notes. Maybe I could look at this. Maybe I think I've covered some of the basics in this, and I think I've walked into some of Chris's question too. I do not understand the difference, what the difference is between chakra energy and frequency energy. There's no difference. People like to talk about the fact that, well, but if there's chakra energy, that's much more spiritual than the energy that you have in terms of your engagement with life. But it depends on what your perception is. If you can perceive energy flowing from a place where a chakra is, then you are learning that which comes before that is less pertinent, but still interesting. If energy comes in through a heart chakra, still is too, then it will come in relative to what you can handle in that heart chakra. And if it has to come in a manner that relates to attempting to understand you, then it will influence your root center, your gonad center, your solar plexus, your brow center, your crown center, your throat center, and any other center. But when you start perceiving, you start increasing awareness of the realization that there is such a thing as chakras. There's a definite clarity. There is no doubt about it at all. You don't have to believe in them. They're just there. However, if you intend never to be aware of one, you have the capacity to block out anything and keep, as you may through experience already know, that you have had ideas that you wish you hadn't have had, but you had them. And it just means you moved on from there. There's no negation in having an idea. Not everybody will believe the idea, that's for sure. And you can move into and through that idea. There's a interesting way. I know I've talked about this idea of love, but the heart center can be strange sometimes. It can open and you'll feel no emotion for anybody, including yourself. And you'll say, what is going on? If you have a partner, you'll feel no emotion for them at all. You'll look at it and wonder what in heaven's name is happening. In fact, that it's at a level of beginning. And many people have had this happen. And they've broken up with partners all over the blooming place. And the partner didn't know what was going on, or they may have been happy about breaking up. I don't know. I have no idea. But it is so interesting because what it's trying to do is engage with the emotional dispositions version of what's right versus wrong, good versus bad, and trying to soften that down, not obliterate it, but help the individual involved to recognize that this is not about the love that you might have for a partner. It just feels that way. But it's not about that. And I used to warn people in the early years, and I realized it was not very much I could. People will only do what they do often. And that's fine. It's one way to live. And we all live that way. But there's a sense sometimes in the heart center that's empty. People have said, I feel like I have a hole in my heart center. The imagery is very important in description. But if you start imaging or bringing up images that are of the imaginative nature, what you will begin to do literally is believe them, because they have a big impact on you. But if you understand that one of the coarser elements, but helpful elements, is of the heart center is to soften down what the dispositional nature or emotional dispositional nature believes has to be true to make them valued. And this is very difficult to understand. So what you have to do is allow yourself not to necessarily agree with that so-called feeling that is relating to an opening that wasn't quite open before. It's a different level of personalization. And what it really means is trying to be helpful. It has nothing to do with your partners. It has everything to do with you and how you believe you have to feel to engage with others. And that is totally in a movement beyond where it is that you believe things are at. Very difficult because we have that in terms of ideologies. We have these same concepts in terms of who we meet on the street, our old friends, all of these. And if you think of this, if you have an idea that you really like, or an old friend that you used to be really close to, all that kind of thing, you end up starting at least to understand that something has shifted and changed. It's not them, it's you. So you have to learn how to adapt you to the change. And it's not about them being good or bad or off or something. It's you. It's the perceiver that is learning to perceive differently. And this is why we don't grow very quickly, unless it's possible that you could withstand that element of deep engagement in such a way as not to eradicate everything in existence that you felt comforted by. But this happens. And then, over a short period of time, you start to get used to that, and then you zip back into how you were before, and there's all kinds of stuff that goes on. You might be feeling uncomfortable. You shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have done that. But it's part of you making sense of you and the formula that you are involved with that enables you to function here on these planes. And hopefully, then you begin to recognize that you are learning something different. It's okay not to be right. It's okay to have ideas that you can leave behind a little, but don't negate those ideas, please, because it's not about negation. It's about broadening. And that's a key thing in all development. I hope that helped a little, and I have a few minutes left, so I'll just take a look. I didn't realize that this was such a broad topic, and thinking about it, it is a broad topic. And if a person has more than one frequency, and a person can have as many frequencies as can occur in them in a species. Sometimes a species is working on certain frequencies so that they can handle more. And as they can handle those frequencies, and there are different beliefs in this, then what can begin to happen is additional frequencies can begin to move inward. And using the old chestnut, if you like, light breaks up into 7 frequencies. I know it's rough and raw, but all of those frequencies, some can't handle yet, and most can't. But some can be handled, and some will be in the early going, and they're having a difficult time handling these different frequencies or new frequencies for them, or colors, if you want to go that way. But remember, please, there are frequencies that we cannot see, but we can perceive with a little bit of stimulation or a little bit of attempt to be okay with perceiving beyond what you can perceive now. Everyone wants to perceive more than they can now, but many have an idea of what that would look like. And in truth, unless you've experienced that, you don't really know what it would be like. It's the most wonderful thing, in a way, I guess, is supposition, or our imagination can prepare us for what we think is possible, but not very much with what is possible. That is very, very important, as just to have in your back pocket. You can draw it out and take a look at it from time to time when you're on your own somewhere, someplace, and you begin to realize that you are being helped to grow in some manner. I think I'm going to leave it there. I'm not finished with Chris's question, and but nonetheless, it will come back up because I won't let it just hang there, Chris. Remember, there are so many different ways of looking at things. If you're only looking to see something, you're leaving out tremendous amounts of capacity way beyond the visual screens that are available to us in our relationship with inner growth. I wish you tremendous growth, and I wish you well. And we're going to do some meditating now for about 50 minutes to an hour, roughly. And we'll get some music on.
पात्रे घृतं पायसम् भक्षं पञ्चविधं पयोदधियुतं ब्रह्माफलं पानकम् शाकानामयतं जलं रुचिकरम् कर्पूरखण्डाचलम् ताम्बूलं मनसा मया विरचितं भक्त्या प्रभो स्वीकुरु छत्रं चामरयोयुगं नजनितं चादर्शकं निर्मलम् वीणापेरिविडङ्ककोहलकला गीतं च नृत्यं तथा साष्टाङ्गं प्रणतिः स्तुतिर्बहुविधा एतत् समस्तं मया सङ्कल्पेन समर्पितं तव विभो पूजां ग्रहाण प्रभो आत्मा त्वं गिरिजापते सहचरा प्राणाः शरीरं ब्रह्मम् पूजा ते विषयोपभोगरचना निद्रा समाधिस्थितिः सञ्चारः पदयोः प्रदक्षिणविधिः स्तोत्राणि सर्वा गिरो यत्तत्कर्म करोमि तत् अखिलम् शम्भो तवाराधनम् करचरणकृतं वा कायजं कर्मजं वा श्रवणनैवेद्यं वा मानसं वा पराधम् विहितमविहितं वा सर्वमेतच्छमस्व जय जय करुणाधीशी महादेव शम्भो न तातो न माता न बन्धु न दाता न पुत्रो न पुत्री न भृत्यो न भर्ता न छाया न वेद्या न वृत्तिर्ममैव गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि भवभक्तावहारे प्रभातप्रकामी प्रलोभी प्रमत्ता कुसंसारिपाश प्रबद्धा सदा गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि न जानामि ध्यानं न च ध्यानयोगम् न जानामि तन्त्रं न च स्तोत्रमन्त्रम् न जानामि पूजां न च न्यासयोगम् गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि न जानामि पुण्यं न जानामि तीर्थं न जानामि मुक्तिं लयं वा कदाचित् न जानामि भक्तिं व्रतं वा गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवानि कुकर्मी कुसङ्गी कुबुद्धि कुदास कुलाचारहीन कदाचारहीन कुदृष्टि कुवाक्य प्रबन्ध सदा गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवामि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवामि प्रजेशं रमेशं महेशं सुरेशं दिनेशं निशीथेश्वरं वा कदाचित् न जानामि चान्यत् सदाहं शरण्ये गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवामि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवामि विवादे विषादे प्रमादे प्रवासे जले चानले पर्वते शत्रुमध्ये अरण्ये शरण्ये सदा मां प्रपाहि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवामि गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवामि अनाथो दरिद्रो जरारोगयुक्तो महाचीनदीना सदा जाड्यवक्त्रा विपत्तो प्रविष्ट प्रणष्ट सदा गतिस्त्वं गतिस्त्वं त्वमेका भवामि Shivoham, Shivoham, Shivasayo. Shivoham, Shivoham, Shivasayo. Nityam Shivoham, Shivoham, Shivasayo. Shivoham, Shivoham, Shivasayo. Nityam Shantam Shivoham, Shivoham, Shivasayo. Shivoham, Shivoham, Shivasayo. Shivoham, Shivoham, Shivasayo. Nityam Shantam सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां न च सङ्गतं नैव मुक्तिर्प्रमेयः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं निर्मलभासितशोभितलिङ्गम् जन्मजदुःखविनाशकलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् देवमुनि प्रवरार्चितलिङ्गम् कामदहन करुणाकरलिङ्गम् रावणकर्मविनाशनलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् सर्वसुगन्धिसुलेपितलिङ्गम् बुद्धिविवर्धनकारणलिङ्गम् सिद्धिसुरासुरवन्दितलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् कनकमहामणिभूषितलिङ्गम् मणिपतिवेष्टितशोभितलिङ्गम् दक्षसुयत्नविनाशकलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् कुङ्कुमचन्दनलेपितलिङ्गम् जिह्वार सुशोभितलिङ्गम् सञ्चितपापविनाशकलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् देवगणार्चितसेवितलिङ्गम् भावे भक्तिभिरेव च लिङ्गम् दिनकरकोटिप्रभाकरलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् अष्टितलोपरिवेष्टितलिङ्गम् सर्वसमद्भवकारणलिङ्गम् अष्टितरे त्रिविनाशकलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् सुरगुरुसुरवरपूजितलिङ्गम् सुरवनपुष्पसदार्चितलिङ्गम् परमपदं परमात्मकलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम् तत्प्रणमामि सदा शिवलिङ्गम्
So now let's begin to do the balancing and grounding on your room. And good night, everybody. Take care of yourselves.